There's a moment in a man's life that hits harder than heartbreak, deeper than rejection, and more silently than failure. It doesn't make a scene. It doesn't arrive with drama or noise. It creeps in quietly. An ordinary morning when you wake up and realize no one is checking in. Your phone is silent, no texts, no missed calls, no plans on the horizon, no one asking how you're doing, where you've been, or what's next. Just stillness, just you. And in that stillness, something unexpected rises. Not just loneliness, but a deep, echoing sense of exposure. You're not exposed to the world. You're exposed to yourself, your thoughts, your regrets, your truth. And for the first time in a long time, there's nothing left to hide behind. That's the moment most men fear, not because it's loud, but because it's honest. And in that honesty, in that silent confrontation with the man in the mirror, something incredible begins to stir. This isn't a crisis, it's a calling. This message isn't for the man who still needs to be seen to feel significant. It's not for the man who seeks validation through noise, crowds, or attention. It's not for the man who's still explaining who he is to people who never care to understand. This is for the man who's exhausted, not weak, exhausted. Tired of performing, pretending, and pouring energy into places that never poured anything back. This is for the man who's ready to stop chasing, to stop convincing, to stop shrinking himself just to be accepted. This is for the man who is ready to sit in the silence and let it do what it's meant to do, reveal, refine, and rebuild. Because that silence you fear, it's not a void, it's a forge. It's not punishment, it's preparation. It's where the illusions fall away and the real work begins. The stillness isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. It's where the noise of the world fades just enough for you to hear your own voice again. And maybe for the first time, that voice is finally worth listening to. So don't run from this season. Don't numb it, scroll past it, or try to drown it in distraction. Sit in it. Let it hurt. Let it strip away what no longer serves you. Because what's left, the man who emerges from that silence, will be stronger, wiser, and absolutely unshakable. Point 1. Stillness is where the real battle begins. Every man will be tested in life, but the most defining tests don't happen in public. They don't unfold in front of a crowd, a boss, or a woman. They don't come during big moments of pressure. No. The real battle begins in the quiet, when it's dead silent, when no one is watching, when there's nothing left to prove and no one left to perform for. That's when the hidden voices start to rise, the ones you've buried beneath the noise, the doubts you've silenced with success, the regrets you've tucked away behind a busy schedule. That's when the questions you've never dared to ask yourself finally surface. Am I living right? Have I become the man I promised myself I'd be? Am I proud of who I've become when no one else is looking? It's uncomfortable, even painful, and that's exactly the point. Stillness isn't your enemy, it's your mirror, and when you look into it long enough, you'll see the truth. Not who you pretend to be, but who you actually are. Most men can't handle that kind of honesty, so they retreat. They run back to distractions, dive into chaos, and cling to the comfort of noise because it saves them from having to face themselves. But the man who stays, the man who chooses not to flinch, not to flee, that man discovers something powerful. He discovers freedom. Because the moment you stop fearing your own reflection is the moment you start becoming your real self. And that version of you, the one forged in stillness, is the one no one can shake. Quick break. Close your eyes for a second. Picture her, the girl you've always wanted. Feel what it would be like to actually have her. Now open your eyes, because here's the truth. Right now, you're invisible to her. You're getting outcompeted by guys with more money, better looks, higher status, and stronger game. You're playing a rigged game, and you're losing. But I've spent the last 35 years mastering this, studying, testing, and finally finding the secrets to get the girls I always wanted. You want to stop getting ignored? You want her chasing you? Then you need to wake up and act. Click the link in the comments if you are truly committed and take the first step toward becoming that guy. Few spots left. Be fast or miss out your last chance to make her yours. Let's get back to it. Point 2. You're not lonely, you're under construction, and that distinction changes everything. Most people confuse solitude with isolation, thinking that being without company means something is wrong. But let's be clear, being alone is not the same as being lonely. What you're feeling right now isn't abandonment, it's unfamiliarity with your own presence. You're not suffering because others aren't around. You're struggling because you've never sat still long enough to truly know who you are when the noise dies down. The truth is, we spend so much of our lives performing, reacting, and responding to the world around us that we forget to ask ourselves who we are without it. But solitude, real solitude, isn't an absence, it's a presence. It's not a punishment, it's a preparation. Solitude is not a void, it's a forge, a sacred, brutal, beautiful place where men are stripped of illusion and shaped by truth. It's where the weak parts of you are revealed and the strong parts are reinforced. It's where clarity is born, where patience is cultivated, where trust in yourself finally begins to grow. It's where you stop asking for permission and start giving yourself direction. You're not being left behind, you're being pulled back, not to be forgotten, but to be realigned. Think of an arrow. Before it launches forward, it's pulled backward with force and tension. That's what this season is. So stop looking at it like you've been discarded. Stop telling yourself you're broken. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt, piece by piece, in silence, on purpose. And the man who comes out of this process won't need to chase anything because he'll know exactly who he is and exactly where he's going. Point 3. The strongest men have nothing to prove. Let that sink in. Real strength doesn't shout. It doesn't beg to be seen, and it definitely doesn't perform. Think about it. The loudest man in the room is often the most insecure. He craves validation, not because he's full of confidence, but because he's empty without attention. The man who constantly needs to be heard, praised, admired, that's not strength, that's unresolved doubt disguised as ego. But the man who has spent time alone, the one who sat in silence and faced himself without distractions, he moves differently. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his value because he already knows it. He doesn't chase recognition because he's no longer dependent on it. He's not seeking applause. He's walking in alignment. And when you walk in alignment, people feel it without you having to say a word. You want real power? Stop announcing your worth. Start embodying it. Start living like you already have it. Like nothing external can add to what's already been built inside. Because when a man enters a room without the need to be noticed, without the need to dominate the space or prove his presence, he becomes the very man everyone pays attention to. Not because he's loud, but because he's anchored. Quiet confidence, forged in solitude, will always echo louder than shallow noise, and that kind of presence, it's undeniable. Point 4, silence builds unbreakable standards, and that's something most men never realize because they never slow down long enough to hear their own peace. You want to know why you keep tolerating low-quality people, shallow relationships, fake conversations, and draining energy? It's because you haven't spent enough time alone to experience what life feels like when it's truly clean. You've been so surrounded by noise, by chaos, by obligation, that dysfunction feels normal. But the moment you sit in real solitude, the kind that isn't lonely but liberating, you begin to notice something. Peace is powerful. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it is addictive. And once you taste it, once you realize how calm, clear, and centered your life can feel without all the distractions and emotional clutter, your tolerance for chaos drops to zero. You no longer entertain the drama. You stop answering calls from people who drain you. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't even listen, because solitude doesn't just heal, it sharpens. It teaches you the sacred power of no. No to people who don't honor your time. No to women who don't respect your presence. No to friends who only show up when it's convenient. And here's the beauty of it. You stop apologizing for it. You don't justify your boundaries. You don't water down your standards. Because when you finally understand the cost of your peace, you realize it's too expensive to be handed over to people who never earned it. Silence teaches you to move with calm confidence, not because you're cold, but because your inner world is finally too solid to be shaken. And that kind of peace, it doesn't speak, it simply lives, and it demands respect without ever having to ask for it. Point 5. Attention is cheap, energy is expensive, And until you truly grasp that truth, you'll keep making trades that leave you drained and wondering why nothing in your life feels solid. Most men are addicted to attention, not because they need connection, but because they've been conditioned to believe that being noticed equals being valued. A like on your photo, a reply to your story, a random text at midnight, a half-hearted invite from people who don't even know your middle name. It all feels like something until you realize it's nothing. Attention costs people nothing to give, and yet we let it dictate how we feel about ourselves. But your energy, that's your soul's currency. That's your fire, your focus, your drive. And every time you hand it out to someone just because they gave you a little attention, you're making a losing trade. Here's the turning point. When you master solitude, when you stop fearing your own company and start honoring your own presence, you no longer chase attention. You begin to filter every interaction not through your ego, but through your energy. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, do they align with me? You become more selective, more intentional, more guarded, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You realize that peace isn't found in how many people clap for you, but in how few people have access to you. You start protecting your space like it's sacred, because it is. And slowly, your life begins to shift, not because you've gained more, but because you've stopped tolerating less. You stop showing up for people who only show up when they want something. You stop giving your time to women who don't see your value until it's gone. You stop wasting your energy trying to impress people who are never even paying attention to who you really are. And in that space, in that silence, in that sovereignty, you start to rise, because energy is what builds legacies. And when you stop scattering it in exchange for meaningless moments, you begin to move like a man who knows exactly what he's worth and refuses to settle for anything less. Point 6. When you stop reaching, that's exactly when they start noticing. It's one of life's most confusing and liberating paradoxes, and it changes everything about how you relate to others and to yourself. Think about it. The harder you chase someone's attention, affection, or approval, the more you chase it away. You bend, you perform, you explain, you prove, and all the while you lose pieces of yourself in the process. But the moment you stop chasing her, the moment you step back and stop bending to someone else's expectations, something unexpected happens. She starts thinking about you. She wonders why you're no longer at her fingertips. The people you spent so much energy trying to impress begin to see you in a different light. Not because you did more for them, but because you did less. You stopped performing. You stopped explaining. You stopped giving them the power to define your worth. When you finally pull your energy back, you create a vacuum that naturally triggers curiosity, reflection, and even regret in others. They begin to realize what was missing, and it often comes too late. But here's the deeper truth that most men miss. None of that matters if you're still doing it for them. If your actions are still driven by a need for approval, validation, or reaction, you haven't truly won. Mastering silence, mastering solitude, mastering the art of not chasing, it isn't a tool to manipulate or control others. It's a declaration that you are done giving your best to people who never deserved it. You do it because you're finally done chasing empty connections and exhausting yourself for fleeting approval. When your validation comes from within, your worth is no longer tied to anyone else's opinion. Everything external, the praise, the attention, the approval, becomes optional. You walk into any room with quiet confidence because you've built your foundation on something unshakable, your own self-respect and inner peace. That's when you stop needing to shout or explain. You stop bending over backwards. You simply are. And in that presence, you become magnetic, undeniable, respected, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. That is the profound power of stopping the chase and standing firmly in your truth. Point 7. Most men today are addicted to noise, not growth. They're caught in a relentless cycle of scroll, swipe, refresh, repeat. A loop so automatic it's almost unconscious. They wake up each day and immediately reach for distraction, anything to drown out the sound of their own thoughts. Social media, podcasts, endless notifications, these fill the void, but they never satisfy the deeper hunger inside. Here's the hard truth. Growth doesn't come from constant motion or external stimulation. It comes from stillness and reflection. It comes from turning down the volume on the world and turning up the volume on your own mind and heart. You don't need more content to consume or more advice to follow. You need more clarity, more time to sit quietly with yourself, to confront the questions you've been avoiding, to listen to the voice that's always been there but buried beneath the noise. Turn off the podcast, put down the phone, close the laptop, sit with your own voice. You might be surprised at how loud your truth becomes once you finally give it room to speak. That's where real transformation begins. Not in distraction, but in deep, honest reflection. It's uncomfortable, yes. It's vulnerable, absolutely. But it's the only path to growth that lasts. When you master the art of silence, you discover a strength and clarity no amount of noise can ever give you. Point 8 is often misunderstood. Detachment is not coldness, indifference, or emotional shutdown. It is a form of laser-focused clarity and profound self-respect. When you begin to pull back from the noise, when you grow quieter and stop feeling the need to justify or explain every decision you make, some people will misinterpret your silence as coldness or distance. Let them think that. This process is not about punishing others, shutting people out, or abandoning relationships. It is about fiercely protecting what is most sacred to you, your peace of mind, your vision for your life, and the precious energy required to build that vision. Detachment happens when you finally see clearly where you are headed and realize you no longer have the luxury to entertain distractions, drama, toxic influences, or anyone who attempts to pull you off your path. Detachment is not avoidance or running away from problems. It is alignment with your highest purpose. It is the acceptance of a simple but powerful truth. You cannot control the chaos of the world around you. Trying to do so is exhausting and futile, but you can absolutely control yourself. You can choose your reactions, your focus, your boundaries, and your level of engagement. This mastery over your inner world gives you an unshakable calm and confidence. You move through life like a steady, grounded force, unmoved by external noise, criticism, or expectations. You become a man who is intentional in every step, centered in his values, and free from the need to constantly seek validation or approval. Instead of chasing others or their fleeting opinions, you move forward with quiet certainty, knowing your worth comes from within. Detachment becomes your shield and compass, allowing you to conserve your energy for what truly matters and to build a life defined by clarity, purpose, and peace. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. If this message resonated with you or gave you something to think about, please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. I've got more real talk, growth, and power coming your way, so stay tuned. Also, I offer limited one-on-one coaching for anyone struggling with girls. If that's you, feel free to reach out. We can work through it together and get you results. Take care of yourself, keep rising, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.